What makes Stranger Things stand out against other horror movies or shows? If you haven't seen it before, here, let me explain it to you. Stranger Things Season 1 shows a group of four teenage boys playing Dungeons and Dragons in a basement, taking place in the early 1980s, until they all have to go home because they played a bit too long. They all head to their homes, and as Will is heading home, a figure standing in the middle of the street catches his attention. He falls off his bike and runs into the woods to his home. It chases him home and unlocks his door from the other side, implying some sort of telekinesis at play. But don't worry, we never get to know what did that in any of the 5 seasons. Anyway, he runs to his shed, realizing his house isn't safe, and loads a rifle, pointing it at the door, ready to shoot, until the lights in the shed turn off and on again. But Will is gone. For about 4 episodes, everyone assumes Will died after looking for him for weeks, but Joyce, Will's mom, refuses to accept that this is the case. She starts to try to communicate with him through the walls using lights, but everyone, including her oldest son Jonathan, thinks she has gone mad, and does not let go of the fact that her son is missing. Jonathan helps set up a funeral while Joyce is begging him not to, and to let her find her son. Nancy Wheeler, Mike's sister, went to a late-night party with Steve, the popular boy, and some girls at his house at the pool. During a beer-chugging competition, Barbara, Nancy's friend, cuts her hand and says she'll go home, and so does mostly everybody, but Nancy stays. They came together, so they must leave together, but she sends Barb off and goes concerned. Barb goes missing after she's sitting on the diving board but gets kidnapped by some unseen monster. In episode 5, the body of Will is reported in a lake. The town is fine with an answer of what happened to him, but the boys, his mom, and Hopper, the police chief, think something is up. They try to see the body, but the government refuses, until Hopper sneaks in and cuts open Will to find cotton inside. That is when they realize something is up with the government, and they are hiding something. In episode 6, Nancy and Jonathan go looking for Barb around Steve's house, but Nancy finds a weird portal in the tree and decides to go through, which leads her to the Upside Down. She wanders until she sees a monster eating a deer it took from the real world into its home. She steps on a twig and catches his attention, and she tries to run away but can't find where she got in from. She does finally, but is traumatized, and she knows where Will got taken to now. In episode 7, a psychic girl named 11 that the boys found in the woods looking for Will tells them that she can find where people are by knowing what they look like, having static playing in the background, and having a tub of lots of salt afloat. They go to the school gym and fill an inflatable pool with water and salt from the cafeteria. She tells everyone in the story so far that she sees him in the Upside Down in his makeshift Fort Byers, hiding from something. They ask her to find Barb, but she is horrified to see her dead body with slugs coming out of her mouth. Nancy, hearing this, decides that she wants to try to kill it, and Jonathan comes with her to kill it for Will. So, they get a bat and hammer nails into it, and guns Nancy had illegally. They cut the wrists to draw it in because they found out it was attracted by blood, even though Will wasn't bleeding, but whatever. And just as they were getting ready to fight the Demogorgon, Steve walks in to apologize to Nancy for what he did earlier in the show, and he ends up getting wrapped up in the fight with it, which involves him in the whole show and being involved in the Upside Down. What's interesting is he was supposed to die there, but the Duffer Brothers found him as an interesting character that they kept him in the show long term. Hopper and Joyce convince the scientists at Hawkins' lab to let them go in the Upside Down to rescue Will from there, and to not talk about Hawkins' lab ever again. They successfully rescue Will, and they go back home, but the other boys in 11 go to their school, and get cornered by scientists from Hawkins' lab who want to capture 11. 11 kills them with her powers, and the Demogorgon that fought Nancy, Jonathan, and Steve attacked the remaining scientists, and seemingly killed Dr. Brenner, who was the main guy who trained 11, and that she hated, but he ended up surviving in a later season because of the quote-unquote dying off-screen effect, or because he wanted to bring him back later in the show just to make the story more interesting. Anyway, the group runs to their science class where a Demogorgon finds them. 11 makes a big sacrifice to get rid of the Demogorgon and take her with it. That is when the season ends. It is an effective horror story because it sticks to the basics of telling a good story. It has 3 complete acts, it has a clear hero and a villain, it has a clear problem that needs to be solved, it follows the formula of a good horror story, having a tragic event, 4 relatable characters, and lots of fear. It does a really good job building tension the whole season to keep you watching to see what happens next. And all that makes Stranger Things Season 1 an effective horror story. Stranger Things does a good job sticking to the basics while being a show. Being a show, it still has 3 complete acts with the disappearance of Will and showing how desperate Hopper is to find him because he knows what it's like to lose a child early and how the town is dealing with 2 missing kids. And meanwhile, some members of the group start to find things that don't make sense about their town, like Nancy finding the portal in the tree or Hopper finding the body of Will being stuffed with cotton. And earlier in the season, the boys find Eleven in the woods alone, and how they found out she has powers, and that she knows something about what happened to Will, when she pointed to a picture with Will on it, like she knew him, and when she flipped the D&D board upside down to imply where he got taken to. And then finally having a climax with the Demogorgon at the school with Eleven's sacrifice, and how the characters deal with her being gone, especially from Mike. As soon as he saw her in the woods, he got feelings for her that he confessed in a later season. It has a hero and a villain, being Eleven, who has powers, and the one who created the Upside Down when she got a little mad. The Upside Down being where the villain, the Demogorgon, came from, and the problem that needs to be solved with how Will is missing, and later the characters find out the monster killing people, like Barb and the scientist in Hawkins' lab, is the same one who took Will. Being a show, it focuses on the fundamentals of creating a good story with such a long amount of time, while not making it boring. The formula is also a very important part of a good horror story. In a horror story, following the formula of creating a good horror story is very important. If you are missing just one of the parts of the formula, it falls apart. Just like how if you make a cake but don't include the flour, it'll fall apart, because the flour is the part that keeps it all together. The three parts of the formula are to have a tragic event that makes the characters act out of character because of something that recently happened to them or the area around them. Next, you want to have characters you can relate with. Having relatable characters is important so you can cheer for them if they get in a sticky situation. And finally, making the audience feel fear. If a horror movie doesn't make you feel scared, it either wasn't a horror movie or it was a terrible horror movie. Like what old horror movies did, was to make you feel like some of these monsters you could see day to day, or to play on fears mostly everybody has, like using spiders or clowns, because of the thought that someone dressed in a clown costume killing people like Pennywise from It or Art the Clown from Terrifier is a terrifying thought. Stranger Things follows that formula perfectly. The tragic event happens in one of the opening scenes when Will goes missing, and all his friends are trying to figure out what happened, even against the authority of their parents and the police. In the first episode, Hopper is questioning the boys on his disappearance, and Mike says,
"We can help look."
Yeah.
No.
Okay, yeah, come on, area Will.
No.
And later in that episode, Mike is having an argument with his mom about looking, and she says,
"Over this, Mike. The chief said..."
"I don't care what the chief said. Michael, we have to do something. Will can be in danger."
It makes them want to find Will even more. The story having 4 relatable characters living like kids did in the 1980s, playing D&D and biking around the neighborhood, gets the parents watching the show to be like, I remember those times when I was a kid. And for the modern audience to connect with the kids having fun outside, or to connect with the characters in the 80s. I remember when season 4 came out and Eddie Munson, a fan favorite character in that season, dies. Everyone dressed up like him in public with an 80s aesthetics in the clothes and his hair. The show does a great job making the audience feel fear constantly by connecting it to the relatable characters in a way that makes you feel scared for them, because you can connect with them in their situation. The fear of the unknown in the Upside Down, being an evil copy of the town they live in, with dust that is poisonous in the first 2 seasons but isn't for the rest of the show for some reason, vines everywhere, and monsters that we have no idea how many there are or how they travel around without being seen. The actors also help make the audience feel scared with their emotions on screen. If a film or show has bad actors, you don't feel as bad for them or scared if they don't look scared. The Duffer Brothers do a great job following the established framework of a horror story, but they do an even better job making the audience feel fear by building tension. Building tension in a scene is the most important part of a horror story by far. If a horror story doesn't allude to anything big happening, then it doesn't make the audience feel invested in the story, and if it doesn't make them lean over in their seat at all in a movie or show, then it didn't do a good job. For example, when Will is running away from the monster, you feel scared for him, and you want him to get away. When that door gets unlocked, and Will and the audience can see it isn't just a figure, and it can interfere with things through walls, and when he is hiding in the shed and pointing the rifle at his shed door, we know that it's somewhere out there, and it makes us lean over in our seat while Will is shaking to try to keep steady while he knows the thing out there is trying to find him. And when it rises behind him and he is gone, we have no idea where he went or what took him, but the tension in that scene builds perfectly to the point of Will being taken. The arguments between Joyce and Jonathan over what they should do, keep looking or have a funeral for him after his body was found, are tense and hard to watch. Jonathan runs over to Joyce and tries to talk to her about setting up a funeral, and Joyce gets pissed that he would ever say such a thing, saying,
And we have to deal with the funeral.
The funeral? For who? For that thing back there?
That conversation makes the audience feel tense, not knowing what side to pick while Joyce doesn't believe that was her son, which it wasn't, but they didn't know that yet in the story. Now when Nancy and Jonathan are ready to fight the Demogorgon, the tension is building to when it will come, and just as you are feeling tense, Steve knocks on the door and tries to apologize, which builds tension by having someone else interfere with their plan, and while they are arguing, the lights start to flicker, and now Steve's in the fight for real now. Lots of times, the story makes you feel tense and scared for what could happen next to all of the characters, because when it came out, we didn't know what characters could die, because there weren't any other seasons ahead of it, which is why Stranger Things Tales from '85 didn't work, because we already know all the characters will survive, but that is a whole other essay in and of itself. But without talking about that mess, the show is amazing, and I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't. And even if I recap pretty much the whole thing, I still recommend you see it when you can. To conclude, Stranger Things Season 1 is an effective horror story because it uses basic tactics for telling a good story. It has 3 complete acts, it has a clear hero and a villain, and a problem that the characters need to solve. It makes an original story while using the formula of a good horror story, having a tragic event that happens early in the story, 4 characters you can relate with, and lots of moments to make you feel fear. It does a really good job building to moments throughout the story to make you feel tense the whole season to keep you watching for what happens next. Stranger Things is a really good story without making it feel boring or uninteresting with long drawn-out moments like a lot of shows struggle with. Having lots of room to tell your story, like having 8 episodes which are all 1 hour long, can make it seem boring, but it isn't. Sure, there are moments where it seems like the characters just argue for episodes in a row, which is what I thought on first watch, but looking back, it does a really good job building to what it needed to. The Duffer Brothers started out with an old camera they got when they were kids, making videos and messing around with it. They started to enjoy making and editing their videos they made and eventually pursued a career in directing, eventually making their first show, Stranger Things. It blew up way more than they could ever imagine. It became the most popular show on Netflix with an astounding 1.2 billion views as of 2026, and all that started with the camera they got for Christmas. Who knows? If you follow your passion, you could succeed, just like they did.